Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown, and in today's video, guys, I want to take a look into if the Toronto Maple Leafs should trade for Josh Manson at this year's trade deadline. Just look at the pros and cons and see how he's been playing so far this year with the advanced analytics, the contextual stats, and how he would fit into the Toronto Maple Leafs, and if the asking price makes sense. In a more recent edition of 32 Thoughts, Elliot Friedman did make note that the Maple Leafs have interest in Josh Manson and that they have had interest in him for quite some time now. But it was also reported by Elliot Friedman over All-Star Weekend that Josh Manson has the Maple Leafs as one of his teams on his no-trade list. And I believe earlier in the summer, the Winnipeg Jets tried to make a trade for this player, and he was also on their no-trade list, so it might just be a situation where he doesn't want to head north of the border. It also may just be a thing where the player doesn't necessarily want to leave the current team that he's with. And if that's the case, he's negotiated for that contractual right. But things are always subject to change, right? Once upon a time, TJ Brodie also had the Toronto Maple Leafs on his no-trade list, and he ended up signing a 5-year deal here. Most people are going to shoot this down really quick because they're just going to run to the standings and they're going to see the Ducks in a playoff spot there, and they're going to assume, why would the Ducks trade this guy when they're currently in a position to make the playoffs? But if you sort the standings by points percentage, the Calgary Flames actually leapfrog them, and the Edmonton Oilers are a lot closer than what they appear to be. If we're taking a look at their underlying metrics as a team, over on evolvinghockey.com, they're not necessarily the strongest. But what they do have going for them is John Gibson, their goaltender, has been absolutely on fire, and they have a very young and exciting up-and-coming core. And if they continue to fall in the standings because there are quite a few games to play between now and the trade deadline, trading Josh Manson and getting more future assets to help that young and exciting core definitely would be the best course of action for them. But along with the bit of information that Friedman dropped in terms of Manson and his no-trade list, he also mentioned that the rumored asking price for rental defensemen at this year's trade deadline, at least for the top-end ones, and Manson would be one of those guys, is more than likely going to be a first and a third-round pick, which is what the Columbus Blue Jackets got for David Savard last season. And Josh Manson is set to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. So do you want the Toronto Maple Leafs spending a first and a third, possibly more than that, on a guy who could just walk away at the end of this year? You could always look to extend the player, but with Manson being 30 years old right now and turning 31 before the start of the season, I don't necessarily know how I feel about paying a comparable price as to what the Lightning did for David Savard at last year's trade deadline, a first and a third, but I definitely do know that I'm not interested in paying a comparable price as to what the Montreal Canadiens did to re-sign David Savard, which is $3.5 million a season for 4 years. The $3.5 million is not necessarily the problem, but the 4 years is. I mean, do we really want a shutdown defenseman who plays a really hard, really tough minute signed for the next 4 seasons into his mid-30s? Manson's already in a position where he's been injured each of the last 3 seasons, including this one, where he's currently on injured reserve with an oblique injury that he's more than likely going to miss the next 4 to 5 weeks with. 50 out of about 70 or so games in the 1920 season, 23 out of a possible 56 last year, 43 this year, and then, like I said, he suffers that oblique injury. I don't know if I want to commit 4 years to this guy in his mid-30s. This quote from Sheldon Keefe on what Jake Muzzin has also struggled with this year is going to be something that I'm going to bring up whenever we look at a specific defenseman that the Maple Leafs could possibly acquire, because they're more than likely going to be playing next to him, and if they can't help him with what he struggled with, and that's carrying and moving the puck and making decisions with it, I'm not necessarily interested in compounding the problem that he's been having. But if Jake Muzzin is able to figure things out and he is able to stay healthy for the Toronto Maple Leafs, that would be absolutely huge, because all Jake Muzzin has been in each of the last 3 seasons previous to this one is one of the best two-way defensemen in the entire NHL. There's only 10 guys over the last 3 years previous to this one who have a higher expected goals above replacement rating and a higher expected WAR rating than him. I think people took this quote out of context when Kyle Dubas had mentioned it. He's not saying that he doesn't know what the team is at this point or what their needs are. He's just saying that he doesn't want to jump the gun. He wants to give guys like Jake Muzzin, Rasmus Sandin, and Timothy Liljegren, who he mentioned afterwards, as much time as he possibly can give them to show him everything that they have to give. For some people, no matter how well those three guys could possibly play over the next 4 to 5 weeks, it's just not going to change their overall opinion on the team. And I don't think that 4 or 5 weeks should do that when the team has shown similar characteristics over the last 5 years or so. That's what we'll call them. But at the same time, if you don't like Kyle Dubas, let me use a quote from Lou Lamoriello. If you have time, use it. And that's what Kyle Dubas is doing here. But getting back to Josh Manson here, I think it's important that before we look at all the fancy charts and the numbers, that we understand the contextual information behind it. Who has Josh Manson been playing with this year, and what role has he been playing in? And this year, so far, he's pretty much exclusively played with Cam Fowler. He's playing almost 20 minutes a night for the Anaheim Ducks this year, and if you're looking at the role that he's played for them, it definitely has been in more of a defensive role than it has been an offensive one, and that's been the story of his career, basically. And if we're taking a look at how the Ducks have performed with and without him on the ice on hockeyviz.com here, they definitely are a better team when he is on the ice, and when he's on the ice, he's playing against the other team's better players in a heavier defensive role. If we're taking a look at how all of his teammates have performed with and without him, I'm really liking Josh Manson so far. And how you would read this is players playing with Manson are in gray. And you can see that the majority of the guys in gray are in the top half of this graph, which means that they're closer to better defensively or just better overall playing with Manson. Guys in blue means Manson without the particular player. And all of them are pretty tight to the middle here, so that shows that Manson isn't particularly relying on any one player. I mean, the one in blue that's way down here is Cam Fowler, but it seems like him and Fowler kind of rely on each other. And you just mainly don't want to see any red in the upper half of this graph, which means guys are playing better away from him. If we're taking a look at his player card for 2021-2022 on evolvinghockey.com here, it shows that Manson's produced good defensive results and good expected defensive results, and offensively, maybe he's getting a little bit of the short end of the stick with the Ducks so far and just hasn't had the best of luck. It is kind of odd to see a guy that's produced good actual and expected defensive results at 5-on-5 struggle so much on the penalty kill, but I don't know what that is. I don't know if that loans itself more to Manson or just the Anaheim Ducks penalty kill. I would imagine it's more of a structure or systems thing, though. But to some people, all they're going to really see is that he's 6'3" and 225 pounds and throws a lot of hits and blocks a lot of shots and has a willingness to drop the gloves and stick up for teammates, which I'm definitely not going to underestimate the value of, especially come playoff time when things do get a little bit more chippy and the whistles do get put away. You can see how much that can swing the momentum of a game, sometimes just as much as a goal. And his 7.92 hits per game, because we got to put everything into a ratio here on the channel, would rank first on the Toronto Maple Leafs by a decent margin. But I wouldn't say that that's a knock against the Maple Leafs, as it is a testament to how much more often they have the puck than the Ducks. But it's nice to know that when put in a position to, he will do it. If we're taking a look at how the Ducks like to deploy their defensemen against other teams' better players, it doesn't seem like they have a first and second pair. It just seems like they have 4 defensemen that they like to use equally, but Josh Manson does lead the pack in terms of the percentage of his ice time spent playing against the other team's better players. And while he is losing the shot attempt battle against the other team's best players, it's better that we look at the dangerous Fenwick 4 percentage, because that's taking into an account the quality of the unblocked shots that the Ducks see when he's on the ice. Relative to the rest of his teammates, he's not the greatest, but the rest of his teammates don't necessarily play as harsh of a defensive role against the other team's best players as he does. Josh Manson is a very good defenseman, and he does it while playing a lot against the other team's better players, and he does it in a heavy defensive first role while being a physical presence out there. I come back to this quote from Sheldon Keefe on Jake Muzzin on what he's struggled with so far this year, and I don't know if Josh Manson is going to be able to help Jake Muzzin with what he struggled with in moving the puck and making decisions with it. But if Jake Muzzin is able to rebound and be the defenseman that we've known him to be the last couple of years, I have no doubt in my mind that him and Josh Manson would be a hell of a deep pairing together. Mind you, they'd be a little bit slow, but they'd be a problem for other teams. He's big, he's right-handed, he throws a lot of hits, he's not afraid to drop the gloves, he plays a lot of ice time, and he does it while playing against the other team's best players in a heavy defensive first role. He's a hell of a player. I just don't know if he's the best fit for the Maple Leafs. It's just, if Muzzin isn't able to regain form, I just don't see Manson helping him with what he struggled with so far this year. And like I said at the beginning of the video, I don't want to compound that problem. If he is, great. But Manson's also an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year, and Kyle Dubas has already said that they prefer, if they are going to spend a first and a third or a first and a top prospect, that they spend that on a player that has more than just 1 year left on their deal. But as always, what are your thoughts and opinions down below in the comment section? Do you agree that the first and the third or a first and a prospect is too much to pay for a guy on an expiring contract? Do you want Josh Manson anyway because he is having a pretty damn good season? Or are you worried about the injuries? Is it a mix of everything? Let me know how you're feeling down there in the comment section, because I don't have a definitive answer either. I'm just presenting the information. And if you're interested, I'll leave the video linked above the screen and at the end of this one on a video that I did very similar to this one, but on Montreal Canadiens defender Ben Sherratt. But that's going to be it for this video, guys. Make sure to like the video if you did like it and subscribe for more, because more is always on the way. And I'll see you again very soon.